Samad, Alexandra, thank you so much. So we go straight into the situation. We had the live stream. You were there in the melee amongst all the people. Tell us, what was it like for you with the women, the children, the elderly?
Yeah, I mean, it was incredibly traumatizing at the border. We had all these people gathered who faced certain death in the countries that they came from. There's no way they can go back. They came to Turkey because that was an easy place for them to get to, but they need to get out of Turkey so they can actually reach a place of safety. And I mean, we approached the border thinking that we were going to be able to cross because everything was done above board. They'd approached everyone. They had a letter from all these NGOs. They'd spoken to the Bulgarian authorities. We thought we were going to be able to cross. But as soon as we approached the border, we were met with the most horrific violence and aggression from the gendarme guards, the Turkish guards, border guards.
So when we watched the live stream, we heard gunshots being fired. Did you know what was going on then?
So no, I mean, I was right next to the gunshot, but I didn't know where it was coming from. It was so loud in my ear, like I couldn't hear anything after that. I thought they were shooting into the crowd. We thought someone could have died because they were beating everyone with their batons. There was blood everywhere, so it was completely impossible to know what was going on. Everyone had been piled into this caged-in area. It was terrifying. The children were crying. There were old people there, very young children, women screaming, and no one knew what was happening. We thought we were being shot at, and we were just being constantly, the believers were being constantly attacked by these guards with their batons, basically, with the most insane amount of aggression that no one could have expected for people who are asylum seekers, who are seeking safety and just wanted nothing more than just to get to a place where they can practice their religion in safety and just be peaceful, basically.
That's absolutely disgusting. Thank you so much. And Samad, at the same time, you were in the same area, or you were slightly removed from this place?
Well, my role obviously was to be the official cameraman documenting everything, so my goal was to gather as much footage as I can. And I seem to have attracted attention to myself because I was directing some parts of the, movement for footage, and because I was moving around so much and being active, I seem to have been targeted initially to remove the media presence that would obviously document that, and I was apprehended brutally and isolated first in order to accomplish this goal. Once the camera was taken away from me, I was handcuffed with extreme venom to the point where I still have numbness in my finger and my thumb. And I was isolated primarily, obviously, to get me out of the way, and then I was moved from the border to the Jandarma detention center where the interrogation began, and it was very aggressive with many allegations thrown at us which were completely false, such as we were agent provocateurs, there to cause civil unrest in order to destabilize, obviously, what they viewed as their legitimate elections.
Which is quite ridiculous when we see clearly you were there with cameras to document the events as they unfolded. And you yourself then, obviously, after this incident in this compounded area, you were taken out, and you were then, what happened then?
Yeah, so I ended up getting dragged out. The police became, I mean, they were very violent from the beginning, but the violence actually escalated when they had their reinforcements. They just started, basically just beating people, putting them in vans, handcuffing everyone. They first shoved me in a van with some women and children, and then they came and grabbed me out of there and put me in a police van. I was taken to the same police station as Samad. I didn't realise that he was there at the time. I was in a separate room. They had lots of different guards come in, shout at me, sort of brandishing their guns and just being generally very aggressive at that time.
So it was obviously very intimidating, this stage. Did you feel this was building up to a point? Did they want you to do anything at this stage? What was going on?
Well, right, I was the first to be taken to the Jandarma detention center. I was alone at that point, and the intimidation and coercion began instantly. We were accused of being agent provocateurs, as I said earlier. Alex was accused of biting, like a member of the border guard. I was accused of breaking the fence at the border guard. All our role was journalistic. We had no other reason to have been there. Okay, like document the event, make sure that no violations were occurring, but despite our presence, they used every tactic possible in order to intimidate, control, literally incriminate everybody, you know?
Yeah, so I mean, over the time when we were detained there, they basically forced us to sign papers saying that we consented to stay there another night, which we did not consent to. The papers were all in Turkish, which was later explained to us what they said by a lawyer, but I mean, we certainly didn't consent to it, so it was just completely ridiculous situation, and it was very stressful. And they made us, well, they tried to get us to sign a document saying that we were affiliated with a terrorist organisation.
You could understand this clearly, the documentation?
That document was in English. Yeah.
That document was in very small writing in Turkish with a small translation underneath in English. There were 15 points on the sheet, and it was point number 14 that had an X in the box next to the statement. And that statement said specifically that we are involved in an organisation that's affiliated with terrorism, which is ridiculous, because this is a peaceful movement trying to cross a border to safety from the likes of these allegations and justifications for execution, which is abhorrent, really.
So it quite clearly seems to be a persecution against a minority religion group.
Of course, yes. Simply because of their belief in that particular religion, and which is a complete violation of human rights. Luckily, we discovered this statement, and we demanded to tear up the papers.
So after you'd been at the detention centre, you were then reunited at the deportation area with the other asylum seekers, is that correct?
Well, we arrived all together at this point. This was after the court case, which apparently declared us innocent or free, pending further investigation. Don't know what that means. At the deportation centre, we met up with everyone, and this is where we learned of their suffering and the torture and abuse that they had been put through, subjected to, on a completely abhorrent level. Like, it was unforgivable, basically. Like, no matter how it's justified, it's completely unforgivable. For women and children, for example, to be put in a tent where they cannot sleep on the floor, they cannot sit on the floor for 3 successive days, 2 complete nights, essentially sleep deprived. And I think in order to intimidate and coerce them and force them into a situation where they will confess to anything. But and I don't understand how strong they are, but they did not succumb. They did not break down. They stayed strong. And it really opened my eyes to the potential of someone holding on to a belief that they truly believe in.
Yeah, that's incredible. And for you, Alexandra, did you sense, because obviously you'd met these people before and now you're meeting them again, did you sense that they'd been through some psychological or physical trauma? Was it evident to you?
I mean, it was very evident that the children had been incredibly traumatised by the experience at the border. There was so much violence there, and they should not have had to have seen that. I mean, the believers really, they were amazing. Their level of faith and positivity was incredible, but they had been through so much. I mean, after escaping all of this threats and violence in their own countries, to come to a place where they're trying to escape to safety, and just to have had these experiences. The women were covered in bruises, they'd all been beaten, elderly people had been beaten, and it was just incredibly disturbing to see it all.
That's the women and children. As for some of the accounts I heard from the men, okay, so I'll give this specific example. There was an 18-year-old boy, son of a diabetic, and he was essentially targeted, probably because he was trying to protect his father. This boy was targeted by 11 jandarma, where they took it in turns to beat him. At one point, they slammed his head on the ground 6 times, to the point where he was bleeding from his head. I believe he must have some form of concussion or probably some kind of effect, damage or something to his brain. He stutters, he has difficulty expressing himself. They also beat him with batons, and like this, after they took turns, they surrounded him. 11 men surrounded him and beat with batons and kicked him. And I don't understand how he didn't lose consciousness. That's just one account. There are many, many worse than that, better, like, I don't know how to express it and give it justice, you know, but their accounts are all available and you can hear their stories. You just have to look for them on the Ahmadi Religion of Peace and Light's website.
And you, Alexandra, you heard some of this tortures and abuses for the children as well?
Yeah,
And the women?
yeah, I spoke to a lot of the women. A lot of the women had gone through horrific beatings. They were deprived of sanitary products when they were on their period, and they were just left outside for days when they were in the tent. And yeah, it's the sleep deprivation. And then just when they got to the deportation centre, just being deprived of basic medical care, which they needed after they were injured, and just left in completely unsanitary conditions.
So where are they right now, and what are the conditions that they would be in there?
So the conditions they're in the deportation centre still at the moment, where me and Ahmad were. The conditions are completely inhumane. They don't have access to appropriate food, sanitation or medical care. I mean, the room I was in when I left, I was sharing that with about 10 other people, all piled into bunk beds, multiple people on each single bed, and one bathroom which was completely unhygienic, and everything was covered in water basically in the room and the bathroom. We weren't allowed cleaning products. The food there was not okay for the children. A lot of them couldn't eat it, and yeah, so a lot of the children are ending up like just going completely hungry or eating a few biscuits every now and then. One of the children is unable to digest the food at all, so he hasn't eaten basically anything since he's been there. He's got a very swollen stomach and his skin is starting to turn yellow. His mother requested on the Friday if she could see a doctor for him, and she was told, oh, okay, you can see a doctor on Monday, which is a very glaring difference to what me and Ahmad experienced. We were able to see a doctor, you know, within 5 minutes of requesting one. But these people, they don't have British passports. The guards aren't worried about them speaking out about their experiences, so they're just not giving them anything that they need. And this is a young child, basically, with a possible medical emergency, not able to eat anything.
I mean, this can be crippling for children in the future to treat them like this. It's one rule for the British, it seems, and one rule for the asylum seekers.
Yeah, definitely. There's a very glaring difference to the way that we were treated. Even though the conditions felt horrific for us, we were still, you know, able to access medical care. I was able to change rooms because there was so much smoking in the room I was in. It was giving me breathing problems. And then I actually walked past the room I left on the day that the day before I left, and the bed that I was in had been given to a grandmother and a very young child. So, I mean, that was a room that was giving me asthmatic issues from all the smoke, and that room was apparently appropriate for a 7-year-old boy.
Ahmad, you were held up with the men. What was the kind of treatment going on there? What was it like for them?
Pretty much similar to what Alex said. Okay, my being British, I'll give this example. So I arrived on a Sunday and I requested toothbrush and toothpaste. It took them 2 days to provide it. So on Tuesday we eventually got toothpaste with toothbrushes. The men, for example, those with medical requirements, they would have to like plead over and over and over for them to provide any kind of medical attention. There's a 72-year-old man there from Thailand, for example, who has obviously medical requirements.
Yeah, a regime of medical stuff.
Medical, like medicine, basically. So he had brought his own medicine with him. For him to access the medicine he required on the set times that he requires them, it would literally be at their mercy. If, for example, the guard was not feeling up to it, he would delay it, and so on. So it really was as though, like, our passports gave us that extra leverage with the deportation centre's staff.
But do you think if you hadn't been there, that it would have been much worse.
Of course
for
it
the
would have been.
asylum-seekers.
The room I was in, I'll give this as another example. The room I was in with 7 men, basically, one day the staff came in and asked us if we had any dirty laundry. The room next door, which had maybe 12 believers of part of the same group, and they didn't have any attention to their washing requirements, to the point where they were having to use soap to wash their clothes so that they can wear something.
So guys, I just want to say what you're doing is critical, because if we just think about it for 1 second, this is happening every day at these borders. And there's 1, 2, 3, it doesn't matter how many people who are trying to pass through, trying to flee from oppression and suffering every day. But if they don't have a voice box, and not just a voice box, it seems someone with a British or an American passport or European passport who's amongst them, that their voice is not only not heard, but they will face abuse, torture at a level beyond even what you witnessed.
Yeah.
I mean,
I met multiple women who've been there for 8 months, 6 months, just like, I can't imagine that. The week that we spent there was just so difficult for me. Yeah, like they're just living there basically, and it's like being in a prison, but they haven't done anything wrong. And people who it's too dangerous for them to go back to their own country where they're from, they're just stuck there because they're just not allowed to leave or go anywhere better.
Yeah, so you're clearly shedding a light on some dark issue that is not being revealed, is not being exposed. And you're unmasking what is something that is absolutely deplorable. And it's a blessing that you can do this. But what do you feel is the message of these people that you've walked with and journeyed with through this experience? What is their message to the world today?
Their message is very simple. Do not deport us back to our home countries. Stop the deportation immediately. The reason is their lives are completely in danger. Their lives are in danger. Why? Because they believe in a faith which is considered heretic. They need the world to make a move. They need humanity to say, no, these people need to have the right to practice their religion in safety, away from definite execution. And it's an emergency situation whereby they're now held in detention, they don't know their fate, and they need some immediate action in order to rectify this injustice, in its complete injustice.
It's quite clear they're now stuck between a rock and a hard place. They can't go back because they're going to be persecuted and most likely killed. They can't stay where they are because they're in hell there. So what can happen? Who can help them? And this is disgusting.
Yeah, you're right. There's 2 options. They have a completely non-viable. Those are not options. They cannot go back. They cannot stay where they are. They need help from countries which talk about human rights. They need help from European countries or the UK or America. Someone needs to step in and help these people who've had their human rights taken away and their lives are completely at risk.
I mean, doesn't the UN declare that it's a basic human right to practice your own religion freely without threat to your life?
You would expect the UN and those who are signatories to the UN mandates to stand up and say, no, Turkey, behave yourself and stop doing what you're doing, especially with this particular group.
Thank you so much for shedding a light on this very dark corner of the world. It's a blessing to have you here with us. And I know you're obviously probably a bit exhausted. You just come straight in and done this presentation with us.
All I can say is on our first day of freedom, our hearts and our minds are with the 104 who are still detained. Their fate is at the moment unknown. We are praying that the world wakes up and supports them to stop their deportation and immediately free them from Turkey and Turkey's oppression. All we can ask is for everybody in the world who can see this to join the petition on change.org, sign. We need 1 million signatures to really push this forward. It's literally an emergency. And the sooner something is done, the better. So all we can ask is for that support, and thanks very much for giving us this time and attention. But really, the heroes are still trapped in Turkey.
Alex?
Thank you. I'd just like to add that the only safe option for these believers is legal asylum in a safe country. They cannot go home back to where they're from, and they cannot stay in Turkey, and the situation is just very urgent. We need to get them away from where they are and somewhere safe.
Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.